My boss is gone. I'm very most of all, I'm just going. I'm big boy.
We're going to go ahead and get started. First off, thank you all for attending. We'll go ahead and we'll start off. Let's go ahead and say the pledge. If you would, and if y'all don't mind, you don't have to pray along. I'm going to say a little prayer after that. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. God, please help us to make great decisions and move the state forward, to do the right thing by the people that reside on the coast and above. And thank you for all your assistance. Amen. Amen. All right, roll call.
Chairman Alford.
Here.
Mr. Delvo. Here. Mr. Sunseri. Mr. Johnson.
Here.
Senator Hinskins. Representative Diamond. Captain Bob.
Here.
Mr. Cornwell.
Here.
Mr. Chesson.
Here.
Mr. Macaluso.
Here.
Ms. Dewey. Here. Mr. Creswell.
Here.
Mr. Hall.
Here.
Ms. Dubanin. Ms. Dandridge. Ms. Tuck. Here. Representative Orgeron.
Here.
Ms. Gotro. Here. Ms. Armenter.
Here.
Ms. Taylor. Ms. Trail.
Here.
Senator Fessy. Representative Connick. Mr. Matthews. Mr. Babin. Representative Boriak. Ms. Malose. Ms. Ferry. Mr. Cochran. Mr. O'Neill. You have the floor.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Approval of agenda. Motion. Thank you, Karen Gotro. Motion second. Mr. Chet. Any objection? Moving on. Approval of minutes.
Make motion.
I have a motion. Angela.
Second.
Second. John. Any objection? Yes, sir. That's all right.
There was, and yes, a reference to the discussion around Hoxie working group. As I recall, that there are other people that can help my memory. We had a discussion around a slight amendment to the resolution, and I don't see any reference to that. So I wanted to just raise that question. If I'm the only one who remembers, I probably shouldn't stay there, but I thought we had amended it slightly, and so I'm curious about that third the donation of it.
Okay, we make that notation. Would you like to just, us make that note?
Yeah, that's what they do.
We go with that now? All right.
Thank you.
Inger?
It was done.
Okay.
The edit was made, it's just not replicated in the minutes, but it was done.
Thank you.
Thanks, Inger. Okay, thank you. All right, motion will second. Any additional objection? All right, moving on. Old business. I'd like to take this time, for us to, I'll have Gordy start, and we'll go around the room, introduce yourself if you don't mind, and, do a history about, how you got here and what you do, I guess that kind of stuff. And, Gordy, you can start.
Gordon Bell, President, Chairman of Coastal Protection Restoration Authority Board, which is the GOPA board. I was state representative for 12 years, chairman of Natural Resources and Environment on the House side. I originally sat on the CPRA board in its inception, and I was past president for 8 years for Terrebonne Parish, and was appointed by the governor of the state of Louisiana, Governor Jeff Landry, as chairman of CPRE board, and I presently sit on the cabinet of the governor's office.
Chet Shasta, I'm the executive director for the Greater Food Sport Commission, which is in charge of Port Food Show and the South Michigan Board, which later on the agenda I'll talk more about. But I've been with the board for 18 years, be 19 in September, and I've been the board director since January 2010, so for 14 years now. And you know, my main job is to be a board director, but a lot of the work that we do is on the coast and highlighting the connection between industry and environment and how they can and work very well together.
Representative Joseph Woodrow, as projected. Well, Representative Joseph Woodrow, I'm Vice Chair of the House Natural Resources and Environmental Governance. I'm the Speaker's designee on this, the House Speaker's designee on this board. I'm also the Executive Director of Restore to Retreat, a nonprofit focused on the restoration of the Terrebonne and Maritaria estuaries.
I'm David Cresson. I'm the Executive Director and CEO of the Coastal Conservation Association of Louisiana. I've been on this commission since 2009, so good to be here.
I'm Chad Corville, the property manager for Miami Alternatives, manage about 265,000 acres of coastal marsh in Iberia, St. Mary, Camden River Basin.
I'm Jody Tuck, Corporate Relations Advisor at Shell, Deepwater Gulf of Mexico, based in New Orleans, but have worked on and around the coast for over 20 years, going all the way back to BitNet many moons ago, and happy to have worked in partnership with many of you over the last 2 decades plus.
Kelly Chandler, I'm the Executive Director of Southlet East, and we operate and maintain the visitor system on the east bank of the river in Orleans, Jefferson, and St. Bernard Parish, and I've been with them for 7.5 years.
Christy Trail, I'm Executive Director of National Training Conservancy. We are a scientific research nonprofit based in Southeast Louisiana, doing a lot of work around coastal restoration and water quality. Prior to that, I worked as an engineer in the oil and gas industry for about 25 years.
Chris Macaluso, I am the Marine Fisheries Director for the Theodore Roosevelt Conservation Partnership. We are a national fishing organization. Chris Macaluso, I'm the Marine Fisheries Director for the Theodore Roosevelt Conservation Partnership. We're a national hunting and fishing nonprofit organization that works with a host of other conservation groups, including several represented here today. I've been on the commission now for about 12 years. Been with TRCP for about the same amount of time. And prior to that, I was the communications director for the Coastal Protection Restoration.
See if I can talk like Chris. My name is Steve Cochran. I'm retired. I like saying that. Which I did after I guess since 1984, I've been working on environmental policy in places from Buddy Romer's congressional office to his gubernatorial office, and several other people in here were there, to the EPA, and to the Environmental Defense Fund, where I was for the last 26 years. The last 8 of those years were spent down here, which is home for me, working on coastal issues, which is why I'm a big part of this discussion.
I'm Dale Hall. Retired from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and when I retired, I was the director of the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service under President George W. Bush. And I was the CEO of Ducks Unlimited for 9 years. I currently sit on the board of the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation and chair of the Gulf Environmental Benefit Fund Committee.
This is better set up. Exactly that.
I'm gonna stoop. Hi, everybody. Good morning. My name is Jessica. Okay. All right. My name is Jessica Daniels Smith. I'm the Executive Director of the Water Collaborative of Greater New Orleans. We focus on helping communities live and thrive with water by focusing on green infrastructure and nature-based solutions and the intersections of water quality, access, and affordability. Our organization is also the EPA Urban Waters Manager for the Pontchartrain Basin. And we are focused on not just Louisiana, but we also service the entire Gulf South. So, nice to meet everyone. This is my second year on the commission.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Arthur Johnson. I'm the CEO of the Center for Sustainable Engagement and Development. We're based in Lower Ninth Ward in New Orleans. It's a community-based organization on environmental. Our focus is natural environment, built environment, economic development, and health and nutrition under an umbrella of building and sustaining sustainable coastal communities and communities of color and underserved communities that are impacted by our environment. I've been CEO there since 2010, and our focus again has been to work with public and non-public agencies, nonprofits as we continue to build our coast, enhance our communities, and keep people educated about the challenges that we faced not only in central Louisiana, South Louisiana, but along the Gulf Coast. And so we've shared that information from the East Coast to the West Coast, from the north as far as Minnesota, all the way down to our southeast area. Glad to be part of this team.
My name is Angela Hidalgo. I'm the Deputy Director for the Terrebonne Levee and Conservation District. I am the Association of Levee Boards appointment on this board. This is my second meeting. I've been at the Levee District working on with Tony Alford and Reggie Dupre for the past 22 years, and I'm happy to be here. Hello, my name is Katie Omertar. I am the Parish Administrator for Kenmore Parish Police Jury. That is equivalent to the Chief Administrative Official for the parish. And we are about as coastal as it can get. We have a Sabine Pass, Calcasieu Pass, the Intercoastal, and the Gulf of Mexico in our parish.
Good morning, I'm Michael Bob. I'm the president of the Crescent River Pilots, which is the middle group that goes from about the head of the pass, below Venice, to the UP Long Bridge. We have about 130 pilots. And I've worked on the river about 42 years, and I've seen a lot of things, and I think to represent navigation on this board is really important. I think this Mississippi River is very important, not only for coastal restoration, but for the whole country. So I'm glad to be here. Thank you.
My name is Cynthia Dewey. I started my coastal planning and policy career back in the mid-90s at DNR, and subsequently was involved with 3 administrations in the Governor's Coastal Office, particularly fun times in the Foster administration where this commission was begun. Jumped out to National Audubon Society for about a decade, and I'm currently a coastal policy advisor that specializes in legislative engagement and future funding for our coast.
Good morning, I'm Karen Lotro. I serve as the State Director for the Nature Conservancy in Louisiana. I've been at Nature Conservancy for about, 15 years now. First in the capacity of Government Relations Director, but we have, throughout my career, I've been very involved in our coastal program. I was actually around in 1989, even Governor Romer's office when the coastal program was first created. Worked through several governors, always. Coastal policy is one of my top areas of work, and what was neat to see in the beginning is the recognition that this issue cross-cuts our economy natural resources and culture. And I've been very proud of the way the coastal program has evolved, science-based, we're becoming the envy of the world, and some have faith that we will continue to work in that way. In Governor Foster's administration, we actually had a task force that was called the Committee on the Future of Coastal Louisiana. And out of those recommendations, this commission was born as the official opportunity for stakeholders to both advise the governor and also help provide information to their constituencies. And Keen Millie, as y'all know, served as from 2002 until the last couple of years. And as chair of this commission, I served as chair after that, and I'm very pleased and honored to support the activities of our third chair in this commission.
Have some big shoes to fill. My name's Tony Alford. I've been Terrebonne Levee Conservation District President for 20 years. Along with our partner, CPRA, a lot of you guys have I know, seen the project that's taken place with Marganza. All the turmoil and speed bumps and everything that's taken place over the last 20 years. Along with the CPRA, we've been able to put Marganza on the ground. As our partner, we've been able to stop a 9-foot surge that once caused 11,000 houses to flood. The next 9-foot surge that took place, in 10 houses that flooded over the years, in putting this project in place. That's what I'm here for. The most important thing to me, and I think it's a great opportunity to not only do what we did in Marganza and Terrebonne and Lafourche and somewhat St. Mary, but also for the coast of Louisiana. And so I'm very aggressive. I try to put as much work on the ground as we can. We all know what core criteria is. And sometimes I think we let the tail wag the dog. And I'm all for the guys that, the folks that live on the coast, put as much protection on the ground as we can, not to throw caution to the wind when it comes to federal funds and the Corps and all the things that we have to do. But always keeping that in mind, that we're here to protect the citizens of Louisiana and the issues that they face on the coast. And I'm excited to be here. It's good to meet all of you. And let's move this program forward and let's put some work on the ground. Thank you. Is there any old business? Anybody would like to say anything about old business before we move from this? All right. Seeing none, we'll move forward. And our first speaker is Glenn Day. Glenn is the executive director of the CPRA. So Glenn, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chairman, members of the Advisory Commission. Appreciate y'all having me here today. Myself, the Executive Director of CPRA, and the Deputy Director, Brent Haas, will give you a presentation. We're going to tell you a little bit about all the activities that CPRA has been up to this spring and to look ahead to everything that we have to look forward to. So certainly appreciate y'all giving us the opportunity to speak. As many of you may have seen this spring, we've had a lot going on at the CPRA world, a lot of great activities, but just want to take a step back for a second and look at all the successes that we've had over the last year and beyond. And so as everyone knows, we obviously have one of the most robust master plans in the nation. We have some fantastic annual plans where we've got dedicated revenues from all sorts of revenue sources that Brent's going to tell you a little bit about. But with those resources, we've been able to build transformative projects across our coast. And you can see some of those headlines of projects we either built or in the process of building. And so whether it's Queen Bess or Rabbit Island, some of these great islands that we built for bird nesting habitat and community resilience, or the Spanish Pass Land Bridge and Ridge Restoration Project that you see there, and a project I'm going to talk more about in this presentation, the Lake Borgne Marsh Creation Project, one of the largest marsh creation projects in the nation. And then as we now look forward to the Chandelier Islands that we're currently working towards engineering and design, making site visits on. We've got some of the largest flood risk reduction and restoration projects in the nation's history that CPRA is building and the state is building, and our local partners are assisting us with. And so it's really something to be proud of, and just want to commend everybody in this room for all the hard work that it takes to get to this point. And we have really a lot of great things to look ahead, but as I mentioned, as we kind of look back on all these statistics, we show this on all of our presentations, and it's really something to be proud of that the state has put forward over the last 18 years. This is all the work that the state and our local partners here in this room have done. Over $20 billion of funding secured through BP, through Mesa, through state mineral and state surplus and other revenue sources that Brent will tell you about. Over 60,000 acres of marsh creation built or nourished, with 214 million cubic yards of material that Rudy Simmons is going to tell you a little bit about the details of how we do that work. You've got over 70 miles of barrier island restored, and then over 380 miles of levee either improved or built. And so it's really just fantastic what we can look back on and then look towards as we start building on all these projects, really start making a transformative impact on the communities of South Louisiana. So as we kind of look towards that, we just want to always kind of take a step back and really realize what we've done here since this program was created. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Deputy Director Brent Haas. He's going to tell you about our master plan, all the good work that we have coming up, but also about our annual plan. As many of you have seen throughout the spring and the unanimous passage of our legislature, this is the largest spending plan in the state's history. And so this is really just a phenomenal monument to all the work that everybody in this room has done. But with that, I'm going to turn it over to Brent. He's going to tell you a little bit about both of those.
All right, well, thank you, Glenn. Good morning, everybody. It's great to be here with you today. Glenn gave you a really good, short but good primer on a lot of the good work that's happened over almost the last 2 decades. And I'd like to echo his comments that that's all been made possible by all of you in this room, in addition to the good people at CPRA that have worked to develop our coastal master plan and our annual plan over the years that really drives all of the work that you saw and will see previously a little bit later on in the presentation. So we're fortunate in Louisiana that over the last, again, couple of decades, we have had a very technically sound process to plan, evaluate, and drive forward our coastal program. And that really has been the result of Louisiana's comprehensive master plan for a sustainable coast. So, this is a plan, it's a living document, but most of you are probably already aware of this. I do see a few new faces in the audience, so I'm going to go through it again. But this is, as I say in my elevator speech, many of you have heard me say this many times, but it's really a way for the state of Louisiana to make hard decisions about what the priorities are for our coast. And the reason those decisions are hard is because we can't do everything we want to do. We've got to try to find a way to evaluate the ideas that we all have on how we can restore our coast and protect our citizens in the best way possible while getting the best bang for our buck. And then the resource-limited environment, which we all exist in, finances, of course, being one of the primary one of those resources that are limited, you have to figure out a way to try to make the best decisions you can. And so in a nutshell, that's really what the Coastal Master Plan is. And then at the end of the day, it results in a suite of projects that can serve as the vision, not just for CPRA and the state to implement, but for everybody in this room who are working with an NGO, with the parish, the port, industry, and so forth. It can be that vision, that sheet of music that we all can see from and be pulling on that rope in the same direction. And so you see a wide range of projects. This is the map essentially that depicts the last master plan that was approved. It was approved unanimously, as all four have been last year in the state legislature. Lots of different types of projects across our coast, from the Sabine River, the Pearl River, and from the mouth of the Atchafalaya River through the Atchafalaya Basin to deal with the control structures. And then we tear off of that master plan with a plan that we develop annually every year. And so from that list of projects that I mentioned that the master plan develops or produces, we marry those with our funding sources every year. And put those into a document, our annual plan, and we can then share with the public, share with our legislature, and has to approve how we spend those dollars on those projects through that plan. So you see that in 2025 plan that was just recently approved by the state legislature, of course, just a month or so ago, not quite a month or so ago, I guess, is planning to invest a record dollar figure in our coast, as it has for the last 2 or 3 years, a little over $1.7 billion. So we're very, very proud of that. Of course, you see here just the announcement of the quote from our governor, who of course leads everything that we do. Passing this plan ensures that we can continue to effectively fight against coastal land loss and preserve all that makes Louisiana beautiful and unique. So, of course, we certainly agree with that, and we're happy that this plan was passed again with a record dollar figure, about 136 projects across our coast. I'll get into that here in just a second. And with the support certainly of our legislature, again, unanimous passage. There are not many things that happen in our state legislature, or any political body, that get unanimous support. We've been fortunate to experience that both with our master plans and our annual plans. So just to break down those dollar figures, I mentioned the $1.7 billion. You see that almost $4 billion of that is going toward construction projects. So that's close to 80% of our revenues that we expect to receive in the next fiscal year. We're putting projects on the ground. If you include planning, engineering, what we consider to be project-related costs, that number rises above 90%. So that's where we want to be. We want to be implementing these dollars on the ground, putting these dollars on the ground so that they have impacts and benefits, of course, to our coastal citizen and our coastal ecosystems as well. So this is kind of the annual plan by the numbers. You have the total dollar figure you see there. There are about 19 dredging projects included in the 136 active projects that will have in this upcoming fiscal year. That will restore close to 13,000 acres of our coastal wetlands. And one of the things that we often don't think about, but that's really important, is the amount of investment that we're making in our coast these days is producing an economy. It's creating an economy. It's creating a skill set that we obviously value here in the state of Louisiana, but that can be used in other parts of the country and other parts of the world. That you may have noticed when you were coming in here today, there was a delegation from Vietnam. They're here to talk to the Water Institute, to talk to CPRA about what we're doing and how we're addressing challenges along our coast. It's because of things like this that we're able to do that. But you can see that about 11,000 direct jobs are created with an investment of this significant amount. So that's something that we're very proud of, and something that we certainly want to keep going for the benefit of the state of Louisiana and the benefit of the rest of the world, frankly. Number of funding sources go to make up that $1.7 billion. A couple of those are really from the federal government. Well, first I'll say is the state funding sources, state and local revenues. I will tell you that we are not what you would call a state general fund agency. We very rarely receive, if ever, receive state general funds to help run our agency or implement projects. But we do receive some mental revenue sharing from the legislature each year to help with the program. Federal program that many of you are familiar with has been around forever, about 30 years now, the Coastal Wetlands Planning, Protection, and Restoration Act, and then of course the MESA Gulf of Mexico Energy Security Act. Glenn, I think Representative Ogeron may touch on that here in just a moment, but that again is a federal revenue sharing program where we get dollars from the federal treasury to help our program. And then the three you see on the right, I'll not read each of those, but those are funding sources associated with the BP oil spill settlement. We are in the thick of spending those dollars, and to be blunt, is why that dollar figure for this year's annual plan and the one for the last couple of years has been so high. It's because we're have moved from a point of planning, engineering, design to the point of executing these dollars. This is about an $8 billion settlement just for the state of Louisiana, and those dollars are being implemented today. So a lot of good information about our annual plan you can get. We mentioned this generally when we're talking about this, but ab25.coastal.la.gov. It's an interactive website. You can go there. You can obviously access our annual plan, print a copy, download a copy if you want. There's also an interactive map there that gives some information and some highlights on some various projects included in the annual plan across our coast. So we certainly invite you to take a look at that and visit that website to learn a little bit more about what we have in store in this fiscal year. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Glenn, who's going to give you a little bit about our recent successes and look ahead at what's happening.
Thank you, Brent. And so Today, we also wanted to highlight a lot of the projects that we're either building or looking forward to build in FY25 and the things that are looking ahead. The first thing before we do that, I just want to point out in the master plan, obviously, we identify projects across the coast. And through that process, we identify really, obviously, $25 billion in restoration, but also $25 billion in risk reduction, flood risk reduction, both through structural and non-structural means. And one of the things that we've been pointing out this spring is that with our federal partners and our local partners, we now have projects across the coast, from Southwest Coastal all the way to St. Tammany, from Texas to Mississippi. And so this really, what you're looking at is billions of dollars of flood risk reduction that both the Corps, CPRA, and all of the local partners are now implementing on the ground. And so with that, we'll be pointing out some of these projects, but just highlighting the magnitude of work that's going to be going on in our state over the next decade. And it's really a tremendous amount of work. And so with that, kind of starting on the west side of the state, as we look forward to this next fiscal year, one of the things that we pointed out in this annual plan presentation roadshow is the initiation of Southwest Coastal, which is both a non-structural flood risk reduction program as well as an ecosystem restoration program. And so we're happy to say, we're starting this summer with the first implementation of non-structural flood risk reduction home elevations in partnership with the Corps. And so we're actually kicking that project off for implementation this month. We have 4 meetings coming up in Cameron Parish to start working towards the next round of home elevations. But the Corps of Engineers is leading the implementation, and the state, along with Cameron Parish, is working on land rights and other associated non-federal measures for this program. But this will be the first of many home elevations and non-residential flood-proofing efforts that Corps, CPRA, and locals will be doing across the state. And so it's really a great effort that we look forward to initiating, but we'll be starting that this summer, and we'll be continuing to give updates both to this board as well as the CPRA board. In addition to that, in the western portion of the state, one of the projects that we're going to be finishing this fiscal year is the Long Point Bayou Marscration Project. And of course, this is a great marscration project in Southwest Louisiana. But one of the reasons we love to highlight this is a beneficial use of dredge material project with the Corps from dredge material that was dredged out of Calcasieu Ship Channel. And so that's obviously something that CPRA and the Corps have been working towards for a long time now, but utilizing as much material beneficially to build marsh and other resiliency projects is obviously something that we want to do. This was a very successful project out of the Calcasieu Ship Channel that we were able to accomplish with the Corps. And just love to showcase this project. This project will be finishing here in the next couple of months, and so really excited about that completion. In addition to that, as we kind of move to South Central Louisiana, looking at Arkansas to the Gulf, as Chairman Alfred mentioned, this is that 98-mile levee system that protects 2 parishes and 3 levee districts and over 200,000 residents. And so both CPRA and the Terrebonne Levee District have done a tremendous amount of work at putting interim protection on the ground. And I know Mr. Reggie Bucher is going to be telling you a little bit about that today. But one of the things that we wanted to highlight is some of the recent federal measures that have taken place. And so some of these things you've heard about over the last several months. The first of which is the Humboldt Canal Preload Project. The Corps, through a Tier DA process, has started building projects part of that overall final federal system. And so this is the first to get the preload site ready for the Humboldt Canal floodgate. And so that project is now complete, and that's really kind of the first federal system that has been, federal component of this system that has been built to date. In addition to that, we also have the Reach A levee segment. And so that's a levee segment that CPRA and Terrebonne Levee District have been collaborating with the Corps for now several years, and it's a lot of hard work. Very thankful to Colonel Jones and his staff to get that Tier DA done, as well as Mr. Tony Alfred, Reggie Bucher, and all the hard work that they did there. But we're happy to say that that is being advertised now and will be awarded this summer and initiate construction of that Emperor Reach to complete that segment of levee up there in the western Arkansas to the Gulf area. And then in addition to that, what Mr. Reggie Cooper will be talking to you about is the Houma Navigation Canal Lock Complex. And I know he's got a full presentation, but just to say that this is one of the largest restore grants that has ever been received. And so obviously CPRA and TLCD is excited about that, and that'll be started this summer as well. Another key project that we've talked to everyone about through the annual plan passage is the West Bell Headland. And so in the far left-hand corner, you can see Port Fourchon there, but this project is really a great project. We're able to get a FEMA grant to restore the West Bell Headland after the damage that was done in Hurricane Ida. And Greg Grandy's here at CPRA is instrumental in getting this done, but hopefully soon we'll have a formal PW from FEMA, and we'll be initiating that work later this year. But it's one of the key components of the FY25 annual plan, and really excited to build this restoration project and provide resiliency to Port Fourchon. In addition to that, as we kind of move further east, one of the other key flood risk reduction systems that was authorized by the Corps of Engineers recently is the Upper Barataria Risk Reduction System. And this is that 35-mile levee segment that really goes from Martinez to the Gulf and continues east to really tie into West Bank and vicinity and the Sluffa West system. And so this is a system that protects multiple parishes and 2 levee districts. It crosses Vaites Downlands, and we have the engineering and design that's ongoing for the Vaites Downlands floodgate. In addition to that, we have the levee work that's going on in segment 2, which is the Sunset Levee District. CPRA partnered with the Lafourche Basin Levee District on that work. But this is another good example of collaboration with the Corps. The Corps is designing some of the segments on the western end that would tie into the North Lafourche levee system. And so we've got working time from the non-federal sponsor as well as federal work that has been ongoing. And so really some good things to come that you'll see as we progress over these next couple of years. We'll put key projects on the ground. And then one of the largest federal systems that's ongoing right now is the West Shore Lake Pontchartrain Levee System. That's a partnership between CPRA and the Corps and the Pontchartrain Levee District. And so you can see, obviously, this protects multiple parishes as well. The Corps has a number of segments that are under construction and being advertised and awarded right now. You can see that work that's ongoing from I-10. It's really the initial pieces of the levee systems as well as the preloads for the pump stations and a variety of other features. But the amount of work that's being implemented right now is really tremendous. In addition to that, the Corps is evaluating the future tie-in in St. James. So they have some additional feasibility study and EIS work that's ongoing there to work towards an extension for this system in St. James Parish. So it's just a large amount of flood risk reduction work that's ongoing by the local partners, the state, and the Corps of Engineers. This is just a video that we showed through the annual plan presentation. Some of that work that you can obviously see off of Interstate 10, and really a tremendous amount of work. You can see all the clearing and grubbing and all of the initial preloads as well as site work that's being done. This is some of that clearing and grubbing for the levee systems. And we'll see the initial lifts of those levees here in a second. Yeah, this is some of those initial levee segments that are ongoing right now. In addition, I should mention that our congressional delegation was able to get $450 million in appropriations recently. Obviously, this system is more expensive than the original appropriation, so we have been working with Congress to get additional monies to allocate to really make up that delta in the funding we need to complete this system. And then through that, one of the big wins that you will have heard about over the last year is the river reintroduction into the Maurepas Swamp. This is really a tremendous project. It is both the working kind credit for Maurepas as well as the mitigation for the system, and it reintroduces the Mississippi River into the Maurepas Swamp. So this project is being initiated now. The first reach of this system is being advertised, and we intend to award that later this summer. And so this will really be the groundbreaking of both the key restoration project, one of the other largest restore grants ever received, but also the working time and the mitigation for the West Shore levee system. And then we always want to mention the hurricane storm damage risk reduction system in Greater New Orleans. One of the key wins as we look back over the last year is the ability to continue to pay off the 35% non-federal cost share for the system. And so with that, CPRA was able to work with the Corps to get $110 million of credit for this system. That was two Barry Island projects that were originally part of this LCA program. And so CPR is going to continue to do that to try to fulfill that match, but really want to credit the Corps the amount of work they did to help us get there. And we'll continue to work towards that over these next couple of years. And then, as I mentioned in the beginning of the presentation, really our mission is to build transformative projects across our coast. This is really a testament towards that. The Lake Warren Marsh Creation Project will actually end up building over 3,000 acres of marsh, which would be not only the largest marsh creation project in the state's history, but maybe one of the largest in the nation. And so we're borrowing material from Lake Warren and pumping that into the Lake Warren rim and building marsh creation sites. I had an opportunity to go out to the site a few weeks ago and see some of the initial cells that were built that are already vegetated and already look, really great, like pristine marsh. And really just we'll be working towards the completion of this project over the next 18 months. But really just highlighting this as we move forward and really build on the funding and the revenue and the resources that we have. We'll continue to build transformative projects just like Lake Warren. And finally, kind of looking ahead, one of the key projects that we really often talk about is the St. Tammany Parish feasibility study. So it takes a lot of work to get these federal projects authorized, and this is a testament to that. I know Suzanne Krieger with the St. Tammany Levee District is here today, but there's been a tremendous amount of work from her and her agency as well as CPRA, Parish President Cooper and the St. Tammany Parish and Corps to get this feasibility study to the finish line. So on May 28th, the Corps of Engineers signed the official feasibility study that really finalizes this 4.5-year effort to do roughly $5.9 billion of non-structural and structural flood risk reduction. So that green line there in Slidell is about a 19-mile levee system for the greater Slidell area. And all of those purple areas are non-structural measures on elevations for St. Tammany Parish. And so with this, we'll be working with the Corps and with the congressional delegation on WRDA authorization that would then turn this into an all-project federal project. But we're talking obviously a lot about the projects that they put on the ground, but there's also that tremendous work that goes up front to get these projects planned so we can begin implementation. This is a testament to that. Again, it's roughly $5.9 billion protecting residents across the parish from flood risk. And then finally, I want to touch on some DC activities and funding updates. And so as I just mentioned, one of the things that we'll be working on as we look ahead this summer is WRDA of 24. We're going to be working with DNR and Neil McMillan and all of our staff to look through the initial drafts of WRDA and try to get some of these projects like St. Tammany authorized and some other measures in place so we continue to provide key projects across the coast. That takes a lot of activity throughout this summer and early fall to get that authorized. And so we look forward to all the work to do that. In addition to that, we work with Congress and with the Corps to get appropriations for all of our key projects. You can see there for this fiscal year, we've got almost $600 million in appropriations for water resources projects. Some of those listed there, the first $28 million from Arkansas to the Gulf, and we're already working on the next fiscal year to hopefully get more capacity showcased for the Corps. But we've got a number of dredging projects showcased there that we're going to be working with the Corps to do additional flood map work. And so as they continue to express capability on dredging, we're going to try to utilize that for beneficial use sites. And one of the other things we wanted to point out, I want to turn it over to Representative Orgeron. couple of his key bills passed, and he's going to give you a summary of that. Commend him for his work.
Thank you very much, Glenn. 3 years in the making. Whenever I joined the legislature, they said all good bills sometimes take 3 years, and it took 3 years to get this passed. Happy to get 300 and 305, the constitutional amendment to put on the ballot on November 5th. And what it does is basically changes the definition of the monies received from OASA from being OCS oil and gas activity, is where the money now comes from, to be OCS energy production, where energy production in the sense of OCS or Outer Continental Shelf is redefined as oil and gas and all revenue generated from offshore renewables, albeit wind, solar, tidal, wave, whatever it is. Any revenue that Louisiana will receive from the federal treasury derived from offshore energy of any form will be deposited into the Coastal Protection and Restoration Fund. So that being a constitutional amendment, we will be on November 5th's ballot, and hoping for a good outcome for the people of Louisiana to once again put their vote down in wanting to restore the coast and showing their dedication, as all of us here in this room, I'm sure, are. I'm also going to bring up HB 642, which is not on there, but if you don't know, it's a surveyor bill that the my 3 levy districts actually have put forward, and what it does is it defines the new geodetic projection plane map, and what that it ultimately does is it helps the surveyors who do our surveying of our levees a higher level of accuracy. We're not so much worried about lat long and X and Y, but we're on the Bayou very worried about the Z and the elevation, since we're always dealing with not only compaction, but with also subsidence and the benchmarks that we've been using. We find ourselves in arguments with Army Corps of Engineers occasionally, as well as FEMA, and this bill will actually put us utilizing the next level state-of-the-art standards as we move forward. So those also, surveyors also use correction station cores, which are all over the state of Louisiana. And unfortunately, after the last storm, some of these correction stations didn't have power, and were not at all on a GOSEP priority list whatsoever. And what this does, the bill also urges and requests GOSEP to move the Corps' correction stations for accurate surveying data to be a little bit higher priority than the dorms at LSU. Because they had Facebook and on before the surveyors were getting accurate data. But I'm very happy that 3 years in the making, we got HB 300 and 305. Thank you, Glenn.
Thank you, Representative Bergeron. Appreciate all that hard work and effort. With that, we have the federal side of what you just talked about. And so many of you know, next week we'll be making our annual Shores Coalition trip. This is a trip where we get advocates together to go to Congress and advocate for revenue sharing for all energy production in offshore waters. And so we're excited to really announce this. We've got over 70 people attending this. A number of groups will visit the congressional delegation from a variety of states to try to get these 2 bills in the Senate and House and Breeze and Roz eventually passed, so we can get some of this revenue as we prepare for the waning of the Deepwater Horizon spill dollars. So this is critical, along with HB 300 and 305, to really shore up our revenue projections into the future. And so we're excited. We'll be out there from June 11th to the 13th next week, and excited to really start that. If you haven't already and you want to attend, RSVP to Neil McMillan. His address is down below, and he will incorporate you into the group, and we'll be having an open reception on June 11th and get all the groups together. And so with that, our outreach team does a great job. Please connect with us at any of the social media sites or our website. But this completes our presentation, and happy to answer any questions.
All right, in the charter for this particular commission, item E4 is the development advice and with respect to the identification and resolution of conflicts among agencies and stakeholders related to our integrated coastal protection efforts and to assist in the identification of any other activity which might conflict with integrated coastal protection efforts. And of course, right now, we know that there is a lawsuit regarding the mid-territorial sediment diversion, and my coworker in the legislature has posed an HCR 256, which is a study on, it's an ambitious due date of June 12th, to come up with the liabilities associated to the state. Can you comment at all on any activities? Because this is a very important issue to many people in this.
Yeah, thank you, Representative Roger. Yeah, we understand the importance and the urgency. We've been working hard at CPRA, the governor's office, to work with Plaquemines on resolving their challenges. So we're still in litigation right now, but as we progress on that, we will certainly keep you and the legislature up to date, and certainly intend on doing the same with the House resolution that was passed by Representative Zarang.
Well, being the only legislator here and being one that starts y'all budgets on and starts the process, I think it's very important that we pay a lot of attention to this and get it resolved as quickly as possible.
Yeah, we certainly agree.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Mr. Curtis.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You got it? I have a couple of questions about, well, first off, I want to thank you for the update on Norcross Swamp. A lot of folks in that area I've become friends with over the last 25, 30 years of fishing and hunting in that area, and they were curious about the progress. I think they see the footprint of the levee being built, and I think there's kind of an understanding that the diversion goes along with that as part of the mitigation. So it's good to hear that the contract's being let and that construction of that project will get underway here in the next several months. I do have a question about the Atchafalaya Basin. I saw it mentioned up there and that there's roughly, I think, $80 million dedicated to that. Again, hearing a lot of concern from especially recreational fishermen in the basin about the siltation issues and what it's caused to the fisheries population in some of the areas that they cannot access. If you don't mind touching a little bit on what some of the projected projects potentially in that area are to increase water flow and deal with the sedimentation issues, and also some of the outreach that's being done to some of the folks who utilize the basin to see if you can't get some input from the community about maybe some of the areas that would benefit most from an effort to restore water flows.
Yeah, thank you. That's a good question. I'm going to let Brent chime in as well. But before I do, the $80 million is the congressional appropriation. So we're going to be working with the Corps to determine where and what projects will be conducted. So as soon as we find that out, we'll share that with you and the entire commission. But as you know, Chris, we know we do a lot of work with the Atchafalaya Basin program. Brent is heavily involved in that, so I'm going to turn it over to him. He's going to talk a little bit about some of the topics you brought up.
Yeah, thanks, Glenn. Thank you, Chris. So there's several projects that are included as part of the Atchafalaya Basin Annual Plan, which is included as part of our CPRA's overall annual plan. It's a little clunky. We're trying to think through ways of maybe how to streamline that actually in future years. But in 2018, the Atchafalaya Basin Program was transferred from DNR to CPRA. And since that time, we've worked on a number of projects. Some of those are access projects, which are not the kind of projects that you mentioned, but we are getting ready to go to construction on expanding Bayou Pigeon boat launch. So that is again going to happen here probably in the next just couple of months. So I wanted to mention that. But there are other projects. Certainly, Ms. Gotro is very familiar with the East Grand Lake project. It's a project that they have worked tirelessly on for I hate to say years, many years now. We got a permit for it and we're ready to go. That project would involve gapping spoil banks in the Upper Mysore region area on some property that's owned by the Nature Conservancy to help facilitate water movement through spoil banks that have been built along either dredge canals or pipeline canals. There have been some challenges with that over the years. I'm not getting into details there, but that's a project that is on the cusp. Another project that's in our Chapel Basin Energy Plan is Murphy Lake depth restoration. That's an area really just south of the project I just mentioned at East Grand Lake, and it would involve dredging a lot of Murphy Lake that is silted in over the last several decades. Another project that's not too far from there would be the dredging of Big Bayou Pigeon, as you know, Chris, where Little Pigeon and Big Pigeon intersect. It's almost impassable. It is impassable really at times, and there's been a lot of siltation in the Big Pigeon area. So those are just a few examples. There are a few others as well. Most of those are on kind of the eastern and central portion of the Chapel Basin, but there's some others, including the one that was just recently completed, the Henderson Lake hydrologic restoration, where the Dixie Pipeline, which is another pipeline, kind of a similar situation to the East Grand Lake project. Pipeline runs east-west across this north-south drainage basin. There's a pipeline there, the Dixie Pipeline, that's been there for 50 years, and the spoil bank that was built when it was installed was impeding water flow from north to south. So that was a project that was just recently completed as well.
One follow-up, if you don't mind, Brent. What are some of the challenges in that area in terms of disposal of dredged material? A lot of the bass fishermen I talk to want to know, why can't we just take the material out of the basin and put it somewhere where it can be better used, like the coast? I know that probably the biggest challenge to that is the expense of it, but what are some of the issues you guys potentially face in terms of what to do with the material once you dredge it?
Yeah, it's an interesting conundrum we have. Typically, those of us that have been involved in the coastal program outside of the basin are talking about a sediment deficit and not having enough sediment along our coast. The issue within the east and west shallows of the Chapel Basin, of course, is that there's too much sediment. It's filling in some of the deeper swamp areas and silting in areas that I just talked about. So like Murphy Lake, for example, or Bayou Pigeon. So the big issue is where do you put that material? If you dredge Bayou Pigeon, where do you put it? If you dredge Murphy Lake, where do you put it? And so you hit it on the head. These places are not near areas that are sediment starved in general. So to move that sediment to somewhere in Terrebonne Parish, for example, or anywhere along our coast, not just Terrebonne, but anywhere along our coast, even down the St. Mary Parish, is just cost prohibitive. You can't barge it, you can't really pipe it, and so you've got to find innovative ways to try to move it. One of the things that's been suggested is that most of those areas are relatively close to the Chapel River. That's the source of that sediment. Could you potentially pump some of that sediment back into the river and have the river transported further south? The issue there, of course, becomes you've got a navigation channel south of Morgan City, and so where you solve one problem only to exacerbate another one. There's just not an easy answer. It really is the point of my answer, I guess, to your question. And these are things that we've struggled with for years, and we're going to have to continue to try to figure out a good solution for.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Steve.
Thank you. Actually, a question for Representative Ogeron. One, thank you and congratulations on getting that bill through 3 years, at least. I'm curious whether there's been any effort yet to estimate potential revenue based on average wind production or anything like that. Do we have any sense of what contribution this might be able to make?
Dr. Stephen Lawrence at ULL did a report, and right now we have one boat lease that's paid for rent, and the bonus bid got, I think, Louisiana like $45,000 is what our fiscal office had reported, and basically somewhere around $150,000 a year in production revenue from the one farm. I think even in what I would consider the wind farm developer's best scenario, like wildest scenario, I would put it at about 1/10 or about 10% of current oil and gas. So it's not nothing, but it's in light of the BP fund money falling off, it's important that we get everything we can. And that's just offshore wind. We don't know what will happen with any other renewable offshore formats.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
I have a couple of fiscal questions for you guys. been tracking HISRIS forever, of course, and of the 110 that you noted that you received cost share credit for or negotiating now, where does that leave us in terms of a remainder? I know we drag it out over the next 10 years. And then the second question is, the St. Tammany study, previous estimates have been 4 billion, now we're at 5.9. What is the state's responsibility for that project? I know it's largely federal, but what's the state's fiduciary and also, basic responsibilities, land rights, easements, rights of way? What do we expect and anticipate to have to do on that study?
Yeah, thank you. Great questions. On HISRIS, Brenda may correct me, but I believe the remaining payment is roughly $324 billion. So all the other payments have been made. We had two $400 billion payments that were made to the payback, and then the 110. So I think that leaves us with something around 324, if I'm not mistaken. So we have, we're working with the Corps and Congress to determine how long we have to pay that back, but that's roughly the payment that we have left. On the St. Tammany feasibility study, the state, the non-federal cost share is 35%. A good portion of that is in the coastal zone, so that would be the state's component of that. We haven't worked through any discussions on how that would be paid back. Within the coastal zone is the 19-mile levee system, so that's probably roughly half of the total 5.9. And obviously, the Corps is cognizant of the amount of work that it took to get West Shore done. And so through that process, they revised their cost estimates several times until ultimately they finalized it at 5.9. So obviously, infrastructure prices continue to go up, so it's something that we all have to deal with inflation and price escalation. But that's really just the cost, inclusive of all contingency and obviously all program management and delivery of that, which is inclusive of land rights and mitigation. So that's the total program cost you see there.
Yes, ma'am.
I'll project, if that's okay. And earlier in the beginning of the presentation, you mentioned Southwest Central is getting home renovations. How many homes are you guys projecting to complete? And also, is any fortifying groups or homes included in that program, considering we had some issues in other parts of the state where they elevated them and the groups were not in good repair?
Yeah, the details of which Brenda may know, but right now the first, both of them together, South Central and Southwest, is roughly 8,000 or approximately 8,000 homes and non-residential structures, and that we can get you the exact number. Brenda, do you want to comment on exactly what goes along with those home elevations?
Yeah, so that's a big number. We're starting small. I will tell you, just admittedly. So the first effort will begin with Southwest Coastal with, I think it's 21 homes. So it's sort of a pilot. Let's get our feet wet, figure out how to do this and get folks comfortable with the program, and then that, of course, will expand from there. But in terms of fortified roofs associated with these, that's not part of the effort. Now, there's no reason we can't pursue that through other avenues, grants and other things. So we'll certainly look into that. Yeah. Thank you, Justin. John?
I had a follow-up on Southwest Coastal. My understanding is that that project was baked into the authorization back in, I think it was 2015, 2016.
Mm-hmm.
Those homes, there are some of those homes that have been destroyed by 2 cataclysmic hurricanes since then. Those homeowners, it's very challenging for them to be able to access program dollars. What are we doing to work with the Corps on some sort of post-authorization change report or some way to have a project list that better reflects current conditions in Southwest Louisiana?
Yeah, so that's really handled in what the Corps calls PED, preliminary or pre-construction, engineering design. And so you're right, conditions have changed on the ground dramatically. There are homes that were estimated or assumed to be elevated in the original study that aren't there, or perhaps they've already been elevated. We found that a good that actually a lot of structures have actually already been elevated. And so while I will not, the Corps, the federal government, frankly, is not that flexible of an entity. I will give them some credit here in that obviously conditions on the ground drive what you can and can't do. And so through this PED effort, and we're learning through this pilot program, these first 20 or 21 homes, that we're gonna have to be a little bit flexible and work with the residents on how to get this done. So those kinds of things are contemplated in that PED effort before you actually get into, touching infrastructure.
That's it.
All right, on behalf of Glenn, I'd like to say thank you.
Thank you guys very much. Did a great job. All right, moving on, Gulf Hypoxia Action Plan update, Doug, Dave, you done?
Well, thank you very much, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you all today. I have been involved with the hypoxia issue since 1999. Wasn't a plan, it just worked out that way. But because of that, I have some perspective on this long process that the state has been involved with. And as the slide shows, I'm the coordinator of a Louisiana Hypoxia Working Group that was formed in 2003. At that time, it was a group that was organizing and implementing the action plan in Louisiana. Now we operate as a forum, but we're still the only open and consistent public outreach effort on this issue in Louisiana. So we are housed at LSU, we meet by Zoom, the meetings are open to anyone who's ever interested in attending. So this is a complex issue, and I found over the years it's not widely understood. It can be a challenge to communicate about, especially about the policy side of it. But we have this large area of low oxygen that forms off the coast every year, and it's fueled, as you see in the upper left corner, by the loading of nutrients out of the Mississippi River Basin, which includes the Ohio, and it's mainly nitrogen and phosphorus. And this is the issue that's coming out of the Mississippi and Chapelwater rivers. And there's a process that happens that we won't need to go into, but basically, the depletion of oxygen affects marine life, and it can pose a threat to our commercial and recreational fisheries and seafood industries. So, it's obviously been a long-term matter of concern, trying to maintain and restore the health of this resource. We do have a record going back to 1985, thanks to the annual mapping cruise that's run out of LumCon down in Cocodrie, jointly done by LSU and LumCon now. And this is a major scientific effort that the state can be very proud of. And it provides a long-term database for this, looking at what's happening offshore on the shelf. And this shows you record variation with the river levels every year, roughly is how it works. The trend is still not one of reduction that we're working for, but this does show you what the record is. There's a few years where they weren't able to do cruises, but this is in square miles, which is what we're all used to thinking in terms of. But back in the late 90s, an effort was pulled together to address this. You have a national White House level attempt, brought in states along the Mississippi River, later the Ohio River, federal agencies, research institutions. And this is the goal that was set back then. And, this is not old history in the sense that, we have a long-term effort. It's done over years to not be too onerous on the people involved. They gave themselves a long time frame in the first version. But the key thing to look at, which is something that's often sometimes forgotten, is this is a cooperative effort. It's built around voluntary actions. So that was the key thing that brought everybody to the table, all those other states and stakeholders. And so that was the initial time frame to try to reach this size, an average annual size that they were shooting for, because that would show that they had reversed the trend of growth. It was revised in 2008, it's about halfway through, and it's basically the same plan, and even today the same plan. The big change in this one was that it had each state develop its own nutrient reduction strategy. But that goal was not reached in 2015, and so there was a revision of the goal, and I was co-chair of the committee that did that. But this was a consensus agreement by all the parties involved. And so they pushed that end date of trying to achieve that target size off to 2035, but they put in an interim target for 2025 of achieving a 20% reduction of nitrogen and phosphorus loading to the Gulf from Mississippi and the Chapalaya rivers by 2025. And one of the things we won't have time to go into, but the measures show that we might, looks like we may meet that for nitrogen, but not for phosphorus. But this is the plan, it's been in place, it has wide support in Louisiana. This is a partial list of the associations and boards and commissions and parish councils and police juries that have expressed support for it. The legislature over the past 21 years has repeatedly passed resolutions supporting the action plan and approved. Where are we today? That's what I wanted to really focus on. And so this is it's not legally binding, but it's an agreement. So it's kind of analogous to a treaty where we all made commitments and we have some obligations and things we're supposed to do. The core commitment is that we're all going to try, and we're all going to try to help reach those goals. And really what makes that possible is if you have adequate funding. So over the years, this action plan has never been fully funded, but it has gotten some funding, and so things have happened. Having been involved with the task force myself from 2005 to 2023, I can say that unfortunately that target, 2025 target, was not a priority. It's not that they didn't do anything, but it wasn't a key priority. Still, enough was done to where we may reach that nitrogen target. But one of the things that was a shortfall was that the task force itself never really had an organized effort to get more funding from Congress. And so, with these voluntary efforts, you have to have enough resources to reach the targets you set. So a major milestone happened with the infrastructure bill, sometimes called the bipartisan infrastructure bill, in 2021. Senator Cassidy sponsored a provision in that, and it got in $60 million for the 12 states. I worked with his staff to put that together, but they did the hard work of getting it in the bill. And it's a modest amount of money, but it actually is the first dedicated funding to the states to carry out the action plan. There wasn't any before that, okay, from Congress. So it is a milestone, the states are working to implement it. And just to put it in perspective, it's basically the same proposal as an appropriations request that I coordinated in 2009 and kept submitting, and it finally came through. So that is a milestone, and it's good, but it's obviously not completely where we need to be. So today I'm offering, providing information, but also some of my own views on what we should do. So keep in mind, this is a great opportunity. It's been around all these years, still a great opportunity that's been handed to us. I mean, the work was done to pull together all these states upriver and the agencies and the other stakeholders. Our state has not been a very active member of this effort for most of that time, and that can change. And so we haven't utilized, in my view, the years of opportunity we had. It doesn't mean that nothing's been done. That's one of the challenges communicating about this. A lot of things have been done, but we're not where we need to be yet. And the whole point of having this plan is to reach that target. There are lots of benefits from doing it. These partnerships with the states, all the actions that have been taken, there's a lot of benefits. But the whole point of doing it is to carry out the plan and reach that target. And it'll have a lot of other benefits for water quality in the river, down here in Louisiana. So, where are we today? What I wanted to put on the table and beginning the discussion about this complicated issue is that I think, the beginning of a new administration provides an appropriate opportunity to do an assessment of where we are, both in-state for what we're doing in-state and out-of-state on the task force on the national level. As it happens this year, our state strategy is up for revision, and so that's good. My view is that it needs a very thorough revision of that strategy. So that's another key opportunity that we have. And our state and the other states are working to apply those bipartisan infrastructure law funds, but more federal funding is needed if we're going to carry out the action plan goal. Over the last few years, a lot of money has been moved around. That's over, at the federal level, but even modest amounts of increased funding, I think, can never get payback. And the things that are going to keep happening, again, that we don't have time to go into, but the Farm Bill, of course, is a major tool that's used for this. And so, this is what I wanted to kind of put on the table is I think there's some real opportunities for improving what we're doing. And doing so in an open process, communication forums like this. The Governor's Office of Coastal Activities is our official member on the task force. There are partner agencies involved. But this is what I wanted to put out today, and going forward, hopefully the state will engage on this. So, I wanted to just take a few minutes to do it, open it up for questions, and certainly happy to continue a longer discussion with you all about this. So.
Yes. Let's go.
Yeah, thank you. Doug, first, I want to thank you for your dedication to this issue over time. It's a voice leading the charge, and I appreciate that commitment and dedication. One thing that struck me is that when you said a complete overhaul of the state's plan, and because circumstances have changed over time, I think that's a great idea. In terms of maybe when we lead in a watershed initiative with maybe nature-based solutions. So there are some real significant developments that have occurred since you were doing planning. I hope that idea, I hope that members of the commission can be active in that discussion. Thank you.
Thank you.
You go back to the slide where you had the year by year, like slide 4. Well, 1988, it looks like you had data and it was like a very negligible. Any analogy or what happened in this?
I think that's a big drought year. Remember, that was the year when the river dried up.
Gotcha. And for the no data years, I see it explicitly says that you're just going to have a complete area.
I know that in the one in 2016, there was a foul up with the boat that NOAA was providing, so we couldn't get a boat. Right, and one of the important details I didn't mention is that the cruise is funded by the NOAA, federal agency.
Right.
Yeah. And then in the older one, I think for some reason they just didn't have funding that year.
5,000, like the very middle of the graph, is pretty much where we problematic or it's barely acceptable.
That's the target I set because they felt like it's achievable. And it would show that we reversed the trend. The trend was a growth, so we can't make it go away, but if we knock it down to this level, it shows that we were, reversing that trend. And that was what they felt was doable. So all these targets have been consensus agreements on what people felt was achievable. Some folks wanted more, they wanted, higher numbers, some folks wanted lower numbers.
And with time, like when are we gonna get, we gotta wait for the entire cycle of 2024, but how far after do we get to 2024?
The cruise is gonna go out at the end of July for a week, and then they'll have a report in early August. So
it's within the fall, you're gonna have your 2024 number.
Right.
See how it compares to 21, 22.
Right.
Thank you.
All right, Mr. Day, thank you for the presentation. We'll discuss further going forward. Thank you. All right, moving on, CPRA dredging update, Rudy Simon. Rudy.
Thank you, Chairman Alfred, members of the commission. Rudy Semino, Chief of Engineering, CPRA. Happy to give this update on where we've been and where we're taking our dredging program. And as Glenn's presentation and Brent's presentation showed, the agency does a lot of hydraulic dredging to land. I've been at this for a little over 20 years. As an agency, CPRA has developed somewhat of an expertise in designing, permitting, implementing these projects. So I'm happy to share some of that information with you today. Full credit to the CPRA staff who have been leaders in this industry, and I think that's on display in every presentation we give, but particularly this one. So, this is a very similar slide to what Brent put up. I'm glad to see the numbers are the same because these numbers change. They go up every time we move down. So as you can see, we've created a lot of land since we have become CPRA 07, and a lot of that has been through hydraulic dredging. You can see the figures there of 200 million yards of sediment pump, which is the main driver behind that figure of 67,000 acres. When you look back and kind of take a snapshot of everything we've done in terms of using dredges, you can see here 18 Bear Islands, this is since 2007, 18 Bear Islands, 38 marsh creation projects, and that creates nearly 30,000 acres. So you can see a big chunk. This is only projects that CPRA has implemented. Diving into some of the partner projects, the locals, the parishes, this number definitely goes up a lot. You can see a $2.6 billion investment across the state since CPRA was formed. So when we talk about hydraulic dredges, you may have seen one of these vessels right here in the river. You may have seen them down in Chapalaya or in the Gulf of Mexico or in some of the bayous and bays. But this is a cutter suction dredge. Normally on a day-to-day basis, you don't see much else besides a floating barge, and a lot of times you see that pipeline coming out the rear of that vessel. This particular vessel is actually in the Mississippi River, a component of the long-distance sediment pipeline corridor. You can see he's dredging the river. You've got a tender tug there pushing him around. He operates from spuds. That pipe actually go under the water for the most part. Very similar, just on a much smaller scale. So to give you a perspective, not every project can handle that 30-inch dredge you saw in the river. This dredge is actually sitting in Lake McCad, Terrebonne Parish. It's a much smaller vessel operating in much shallower water, but also producing at a much lower pace. Just to give you an idea, when we design these projects, we have to get a feel for what type of equipment is capable to build it based on what we can bring this equipment. I can't take that 30-inch dredge and put it in Lake McCad because it drafts about 12 feet, give or take. So this vessel is actually fit for a smaller inland body of water and did a great job on this project. Like I mentioned, you don't see this very often. He's just showing off in this picture, but that is the cutter head. That is actually agitating the bottom of the water bottom sediment. There's a large pump. You can actually get a picture of the ladder pump right there. There's a centrifugal pump on the ladder. It's actually bringing that sediment up. This particular dredge likely has another pump that's sending it on its way up towards the rear of the dredge. The other side of the pipe, unless you're very brave and get right up close like this person has, this is the sediment slurry coming out. You see a lot of high pressure. This is a 30-inch diameter pipe, some of the largest dredges we've seen. This is some sandy material, so you see the earth moving equipment up there, moving that around, making sure it's hitting its target elevation. Another piece of equipment you may see if you ever go down to the lower river, I know Mr. Bott's probably seen a few of these in his day down in the lower river, a hopper dredge. It really looks like a ship on a day-to-day basis. And this particular dredge actually has two arms that extend down on either side of it. They'll actually suck up the sediment and it's stored in its hull and sail inland. Once it gets inland, it can dispose of that material in a couple of different ways. This particular one has a pump out on the front. Some of them actually have doors along the bottom where you can dump it in another area, which we see in the lower river a lot. This one's actually loaded down. You can see he's drafting pretty low, but it's loaded with sediment. It has actually excavated some sediment somewhere and it's sailed in. A good example of this for coastal restoration was on the Cameron Parish shoreline. To get good beach quality sand, we have to go about 30 miles into the Gulf of Mexico. It's really difficult to pipeline or pump sediment that far, so that it becomes a perfect project for a hopper dredge. This particular vessel probably holds about 3,000 cubic yards. We had two going at the same time. He had, sailed out, actually dredged up, it's low and sediment, sailed in, and you can see he's hooked up to the pipeline there. The pipe actually goes out, and he's advanced the beach out this way. So we had 2 of these running. We don't see as many of these on our coast. You see a lot of these on the East Coast, particularly where you have a large presence of good sand. You really can't dredge anything with sand with these vessels. You just try to put silts and clays in there to stay in suspension. What he'll do is actually dredge, fill the hull, and let the water flow out. He wants to just sail with dry sand. That's like a lot lighter than having a lot of water. If you're dredging a lot of silts and clays or other smaller grain material, you can't be water quickly enough. So it's not just about the dredges, it's everything else that goes into building these projects. So obviously you see the dredge here at the top left. But a great deal of steel pipeline is brought in place to build most of these projects, as well as booster pumps. Sometimes we're pumping distances that the pump on the dredge cannot facilitate where we're going. So we're bringing in additional pumps that are on barges that look like this. We also have, I know a lot of you work on the coast have seen these pieces of equipment, marsh buggies, excavators. So basically it's an excavator mounted to a marsh buggy. Building direction containment that's likely. A lot of times, if it's enough dry, we're bringing a barge mounted excavator to build dikes. And in some cases, to keep the dikes up, we'll put concrete mats on it so you can see this equipment doing that here. We'll talk a little bit more about first containment dikes for So we talked, the 2 primary uses of hydraulic dredges for these are master plan projects of Barrow Island and demonstration. We're very proud of the Barrow Island program we put forward, particularly since 2007. And you see the islands there in red on the east side of the state have successfully been completed, largely in part to the settlement dollars put in play. A good example of that is the West Grand Care Beach Nursery project, our most recently completed Barrow Island project. Just give you a feel for the scale of these projects as well as the processes. You can see the steel pipe, a lot of times we'll bifurcate or split that pipe, go in an on-off manner, let that sediment kind of dewater and drain out while one's off and switch. You can see the earth moving equipment there distributing the sediment. You can also see other bulldozers and things in place. You see the lateral dikes allowing the retainage time of that sediment so the sand drop out. But what's evident here is the width and scale of these projects is so impressive. So this was a recently completed project, just to give you a feel for what a Barrow Island project looks like. Dewaters very quickly. You can essentially go out there and walk on it, ride on it as soon as that dredge is turned off. Marsh creation, very similar process. You see the dredge, you see the dewater, very flat land that was built, and then within a year, this is a Mississippi River project, so within a year, this particular site vegetated quite well on its own. Most of the times that's the case. Some areas require supplemental planting, of course, but when we're dredging Mississippi River sediment, it's quite full of nutrients and vegetates quite well. So I'll give you 2 kind of different examples, different looking projects in terms of marsh creation. This is Spanish Pass. I think a lot of y'all have visited this site at some point. You can see river sand. Once again, the scale of the project that's being built, the dredge is way back here in the river. We're looking at 6, 7, 8 miles of pump distance to get that sediment here. As soon as this dredge is turned off, that site dewaters immediately, and it really turns into a traditional earthwork site. Bulldozers will grade it, get it to the elevation that's required, and that'll be it. On the opposite end of the spectrum, Glenn talked a lot about Lake Borgne. But one of the things you see here is not just the size of the equipment and the discharge process, much smaller piece of equipment, much smaller discharge, but the quality of the material. We're dealing with clays here. You're not going to see any bulldozers rolling around this site. They would sink on site. This is actually more of a retainage issue. We will design a weir and we will let this site be watered. Rather than controlling it with bulldozers and other earth moving equipment, we basically fill it up in a slurry. The weirs will actually discharge the water and dewater it, and then we have a washout. So that kind of gives you both ends of the spectrum in terms of size of project, in terms of equipment, but also the type of material. Both of these are quite large projects built with totally different pieces of equipment. So we presented the annual plan in several different ways over the past several months. What I'd like to do is walk you through the annual plan and highlight how much of that annual plan has hydraulic dredging projects. You can see here, this summary slide was put on Glenn's presentation as well. 19 dredging projects took construction in the fiscal year 25 annual plan. And we'll walk you through that process right now. Starting in the southwest region, you can see there the two in this year's annual plan that are under construction. Building Body, which is actually recently open bids and starting construction. We're starting to get some construction surveys happening. We've had pre-construction meetings recently. We anticipate that to be under construction fairly soon. And then the Calcasieu 70 large-scale marsh creation and hydrologic restoration, really a program that's being put in place. And this is a recently completed project, Long Point Bayou, that I'm going to show you as well. Once again, you're not going to see any bulldozers on this site. We're dredging silts and clays from the Calcasieu Ship Channel. Glenn made it a point to say that this was very proud of the effort. This is beneficial use of dredging material. So the Corps is actually dredging the Calcasieu Ship Channel. They have to get rid of the material to go to the market. To take that a step further, this has been a unique project. Our engineers designed the project, we handed that design to the Corps. They put it in a bid package and bid it. So we're very proud of that process as well. I think it worked well for everybody. And this is the Calcasieu 70 project here. You can see this is a large drainage project to basically get water moving in a better way in the Camarilla watershed. That will involve a lot of interior drainage, dredging some of the existing bayous and canals within that system. And as a result of that, we will create new marsh in that. So you can see we have an opportunity to create several thousand acres of marsh in this, and we anticipate some of that to be in construction this coming fiscal year. Moving to the South Central, once again, you see all the projects in the annual plan. The ones highlighted in red are the dredging projects that we anticipate to be under construction. That's 6 in this area. And you can see one of the ones that was also mentioned previously was the FEMA component of the West Vale headland repair. This is to kind of put some of that stuff back in place that Hurricane Zeta displaced several years ago in the 2020 hurricane season. And then obviously you see a very large concentration of projects in the southeast region due to the settlement dollars and other projects that have gone in place there. So we have 9 hydraulic dredging projects under construction, very active here. A couple of Mississippi River projects, including the Grand Bayou project, which we opened bids on recently. We'll kind of dive into that here. So Mississippi River dredging, something we're quite proud of, something we presented on several times. Earlier in our program's history in the 2010 timeframe, we knew the river would give us a set of resources. So we went ahead and planned sites that we could dredge. A lot of navigation dredging doesn't actually take place in this region of the river. Most of the dredging is down the Southwest Pass. So you don't really have the luxury of a lot of beneficial use opportunities here. What we do have is point bars that actually give us perpetual sources of sand. So we can actually occupy any of these sites. We've identified 6 in this kind of mid-reach. This is kind of between Alliance and Point LaHatch, where we can park a dredge and dredge these areas. And the best part is once we dredge them, within a 3 to 5 year period, they will infill, and that settlement will be available for future dredging. So this gives us anywhere between 50 and 60 million cubic yards of sediment between Alliance and Point LaHatch, which does give us many opportunities to create some marsh in some of these areas here. So we went ahead and established pre-permitted some corridors to install dredge pipeline and actually take advantage of creating a program. You're very familiar with the Mississippi River Long Distance Southern Pipeline Corridor at Alliance. So this is the Phillips Conoco refinery here. Here's the Alliance small site, Myrtle Groves in this area right here. And you can see over the course of several years, we've actually had 6 different marsh creation projects going around here. That's over 3 dredging contracts. So we've taken advantage of kind of combining some of those into unique contracts. 3,000 acres and an investment of over $300 million. Similarly, a little bit downriver near Point LaHatch, we took advantage of a corridor off the river that goes under Highway 23 and over the levee. And you can see here, the ones in green have been completed, and then one of these has actually recently been. So this actually Grand Bayou will be on construction soon. We just recommended the award for that. And you can see 7 marsh creation projects, 2 completed, and you can see several in design, 2,100 acres at an investment of $245 million. So we've taken advantage of 2 of the areas in the river and look to take advantage of others in the future. And this kind of project's logistics slide is kind of everything else. What else goes into these projects? Obviously, dredging is quite simple. It's really just moving sediment from point A to point B. But those of you who have seen these projects know it's a lot more, it takes a lot more than that. A lot of times we have to actually bring the site in a small earthen levee. That's actually quite complicated given the soil conditions of where we're at, as well as the oil and gas infrastructure and other resources in the area of getting this equipment in. This kind of neat little cartoon shows you a cross section of, we'll dig from the inside of the site, actually deposit the material from the outside, build the levee, and then that pit will get infilled once we start dredging. So we always try to take advantage of that. And you can see some of the geotechnical analysis required for stability berm, similar to a hurricane protection levee or other earthing embankment. If we start to eat into that berm a little bit, you could see some failures here. Contractors do have a tendency to go out of bounds a little bit and have seen some of those failures happen. I really like this series of pictures. It's actually on the Long Point Bayou project in Southwest Louisiana. This is how the nights are supposed to look. You can see here, he's coming and putting a rough cut and stacking material. He's got a second piece of equipment helping it grade shape. And here's your final product. These are beautiful everything that I built with a good clay material, so it's held together quite well. We don't always have that luxury. It's other parts of our state, particularly Southeast Louisiana, where the soil is a little more organic, but it worked out well on this one. As I mentioned, a lot of the equipment we bring to these sites require digging or deeper draft, and this just kind of shows you some of those challenges. You see the pipeline map, you see the well map, and you see private lands. We have to coordinate all these entities to get all our employees to the site. It's not just a free pass. We have to make sure we know where everything's at before we bring everything in. It's one of my final slides, and I presented this at the board in April, and I really like this slide. It shows you stakeholder coordination is something that takes place in every project, this particular stakeholder's navigation. We're down in Venice. This is for the Spanish Pass project. We're down in the Lower River. You can see the general kind of width of the Mississippi River Navigation Channel. We're off to the side on one of those point bars that I mentioned. And we're trying to get sediment to a marsh creation site that's over there. That's the Spanish Pass project. And this kind of shows you, it looks pretty simple, right? You got to bring that pipeline across the water there, and all is good. This video shows you all the things going on while this dredging is working. So you see ships passing, smaller boats passing. This vessel that is kind of lost right here is actually a hopper dredge. I think it was some navigation dredges with the core. And kind of riding around backwards. So it kind of puts into perspective all the challenges and why that coordination is so important to make sure that the navigation industry knows where this dredge is at all time, knows where that pipeline is. The installation of that pipeline actually closed down the channel for a couple of days. That was necessary, but I think we properly coordinated everything and were able to execute. But that gives you kind of a perspective of what goes into these jobs. I'll close with some recent cost trends. Just today, talking to several people have asked, the bid projects, how the bids come in. Well, as you know, since the first quarter of 22, we did start to see inflation escalation take a toll on a lot of public works and infrastructure projects. And we fell victim to that as well as many other public agencies. So we have seen some improvement since the beginning of Q4 22, but things are still on the higher side, particularly for large contracts where you never know if you can predict that volatility in certain prices. And then you see certain materials, particularly riprap, steel, cement, we do see a lot of volatility there as well. So just to summarize it without going into too many more details, 20 projects since Q1 2022. You can see if you summed up all the low bids and compared it to the total of the final engineer's estimates, we fell about 50 million short, 51 million short. So we missed about 19%. DOT also saw about a 20% deficit as well. So this was right on track with other public agencies. Fortunately, we were able to award all the 2 projects. So that is a matter of finding additional funds to go ahead and get these projects to award or reduce the size of the project to get to award. We've taken advantage of both to luckily award most of that. You can see here, we did fall victim to that. If you only look at dredging projects, which is a little bit harder to predict at times, there's been 6 projects in this period. since Q1 2020 present, we still listed by about 12%, $20 million deficit. All dredging projects have been awarded in this period. We were able to, for the most part, shrink the size of some and then identify additional funds on others. So, very happy to report we're still completing our mission in building projects, although for a much higher cost in some cases. I do think that's my last slide. I'm happy to answer any questions or discuss anything I presented. As long as it doesn't pertain to college baseball, I'm happy to.
The Laurel area that you highlighted for the Spanish Pass, are there models to see how quickly it'll resediment back up with sand in there, or is it being monitored after the fact?
It is, absolutely, yes. So we did actually do, when we went through the fall, we also, after we completed our first several projects, we started modeling that very thing and monitoring it. So the number that we use from a planning standpoint is generally 5 years. However, you get a couple of high river events, and that's much quicker. So I can tell you, when we were dredging the lines a couple of times, we saw that making field much quicker in terms of maybe 2 or 3 years. But you did have the luxury of some high river. You get some drought river, then you may see 5. So it's hard to pick one single time frame on it, but we can take 3 to 5 years.
Gives like a 50 to 60 million cubic yards that you say you have in 6 spots. Basically, you're monitoring what's the setup and moving the river year to year and how quickly it's.
That's right. And so what we're trying to do is, as we dredge these sites, we're trying to plan the next project and see when we need to design it and obtain funds for it. So that number is very important because these sites are optimal locations. We want to use them.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
No, you're good.
Okay. Very nice presentation for people who don't know anything about dredging, but I think the Corps of Engineers historically has done just a great job for us navigationally, and kept our channel deep. We have a dynamic bottom, like you said. It doesn't sound right, but when we have problems of depth, it's doing high river because there's so much oil material. So since I'm a young boy, they had a small dredge in Chalmette called Murphy's Dredge. And I've been passing it for years and years and years. And they just dredge 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and they sell it for foundations, housing. And I always thought to myself, that is a replenishing inventory that they're not paying for. That's beautiful and built. And so navigationally, the hopper dredges that you talked about, they take all that dredge, that beautiful dredge material, and go up the continental shelf and just dump it, instead of utilizing it for beneficial dredging. So I am very, very supportive. The pilots are very, very supportive of beneficial dredging. We've cooperated, and every time we close the river to bury a pipe, and it's something we don't want to run aground. We don't want any incident because it's about 350 million to 400 million per day when you cork the river up. So it's a big deal for us. It's got to be a big deal for everybody, but it's something that, to me, when you beneficial use of that dredge material to build Louisiana, it does 2 birds with 1 stone. It digs my channel, it digs my anchorages to deeper water, which we need, and as Seminole said, in 3 years it replenishes itself, so it's back in there so they can dredge it again. The only thing I would say, from our standpoint, pilot standpoint, is logistically when y'all dredge the anchorages, because what makes the Mississippi River so attractive to globally is that we have staging anchorages. Grain elevator, spring elevator, in their contracts, you're not in the queue to get your grain until you're X amount of miles away. So logistically, we just want to have some communication between us. We forward it, totally forward it, because it's beneficial for us and it's beneficial for Louisiana. So really good presentation. Thank you.
Thanks to you for your collaboration. We understand the logistics of crossing that channel with pipeline. Thanks to you and your guys for facilitating that.
No problem, anytime.
I've got a couple, Rudy, so bear with me if you don't mind. You mentioned the 6 borrow areas you identified. I know when you initially built the one by Alliance that built that initial 500 acres, that additional part of the Barrett area land bridge, there was a good deal of cost associated with the infrastructure that was already in place, the railroad, the levee, the road, et cetera. Are those costs also associated with moving to the other borrow areas as well, or can you tap in to the infrastructure that's still in place in Alliance as you move down the river to utilize those other borrow sites?
For Alliance, we've utilized those same crossings, as well as Point Select. That same crossing exists and has been utilized several times. If we were to go into a borrow site, say at Myrtle Grove a little bit further, we would actually give the contractor an option to utilize that crossing, or we could establish another one. The crossings of the highway are not so much a cost, but really a timing. It's very difficult to do in high river, because you have to keep the actual excavation site or mooring sites are on it. So every one of those excavations have been somewhat problematic, not from a cost standpoint, but just mainly from a logistics standpoint. So we've taken advantage of the existing crossings to date, but if we do need to establish one, from a design standpoint, from a funding standpoint, they're not that complicated. We actually have a project right now in Grand Bayou down at Point Celeste, where we gave the contractor the option of taking advantage of the current crossing, or if he goes to the Magnolia Laurel Pit, which is a little to the south, he can establish another one. So we gave him that option. Nobody likes to do those directional drillings down there on a high river. You have to keep wells in place to pump the site dry. But if needed, we can establish more. So from a cost standpoint, I don't think it moves the needle that much, but from a regulatory standpoint, obviously a lot of DOT coordination takes place. But to date, we've used the ones that we've established.
Thanks, I appreciate that. It's been suggested by some that the amount of land or acreage that is projected to be created by Mid-Barrett area could be replaced with dredging. Have you done, has CPRA taken a look at what the costs associated with that, creating those 21 square miles and sustaining that additional wetland would be through dredging alone? And getting back to Mid-Barrett area, I know that a lot of the Barrier Island projects in the Barrett area basin and the other dredge marsh creation projects are designed in some way to work in concert with that project. Will those projects be less effective, the dredging projects in place? Will they be less effective without the diversion should we get a situation where the project doesn't move forward?
Yeah, well, I'll answer that part first. Most of the projects that you saw today that have been put on the ground were designed for a 20-year life, not considering Mid-Barrett area. If you could, for example, if you were to build a marsh creation project near Mid-Barrett area, like for example, the ones at Point Celeste, there's evidence that those could last longer than 20 years. But at least the funding, at least the analysis of it, they're all 20-year design life without Mid-Barrett area. So that I think it's an added benefit, right? In terms of costing large-scale marsh creation in this area, in 2018 we were actually put together something of that nature, and we presented it to the board, the CPRA board, and the number that was presented at that time was $4 billion. And that the acres were a little bit different because the EIS hadn't been completed yet. I think if you look at the current cost trends today, and we haven't fully refined those numbers to this point, but I think we can reasonably assume that you would see at a minimum $4 billion, if not much higher, just based on some of the cost trends we're seeing today. And the fact that those areas have gotten a little bit deeper due to size in that area. So the number that was put on record in 2018 was $4 billion for a comparable amount of marsh to be put in place there. So obviously it's not a true apples to apples. It's a difficult thing to say, let's just do that versus that, but we did our best to present that at the time, and that was what we came up with.
Thank you.
Jeff?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Senator, I kind of have a question that goes a little bit beyond where Chris was, but I know you have dredging opportunities until you're using, I think as Captain Bob mentioned, you're using, you know, you got it here, you gotta move it, you gotta do something with it. But because I've always had this issue or concern, and I assume you guys are dealing with it, that the original reason the marsh was lost has been addressed somehow, and then you're coming back and then creating marsh, because otherwise we start buying time, I know it's not a sexy term, but you pump it, dump it, you know, and then you still have the same erosive forces attacking that same site. I gotta imagine you guys are dealing with that, but how do you deal with that, particularly as you go from southwest to south central to southeast? Pretty complicated endeavor. How are you guys gonna sort of deal with all of that? And then kind of back to where Mr. Macaluso mentioned, are you guys looking at it where you have different restoration techniques kind of all acting in concert with one another? Did you dive into that just a little bit?
Yeah, and I think you know, it depends on where you're at. Every region is slightly different. So we'll go back to the Calvert issue, which I think we're doing. We think we're addressing the root problem in the Cameron Creole watershed. Now we're going to go to the marsh in there, and we think that in terms of what's going to cause that marsh to go away has been solved. Let's put the marsh back and hopefully have a fully sustainable system for the long term. There are some projects that we built different parts of our coast that are, you know, we've created 20 years of habitat, and after 20 years, we're going to be right back to the start. So that's not necessarily we haven't necessarily addressed the problem, but we have put functional habitat on the landscape for a period of 20 years, possibly longer in some cases. There are some parts of the coast where either the water is too deep or the salt is too poor, that another way of building ecosystem restoration. It probably makes more sense. For example, we see in Terrebonne, where we have levee systems, we've seen the parishes as well as us build terraces. That actually works a lot better. It's more cost effective. You get a better bang for your buck. And really, we have problems building some marsh creation in some of those areas. So I do think, I see where you're going with your question. I think we accomplish that in some areas by fixing the hydrology, so to speak. But in other areas, you will see projects we put down. They have their 20-year design life, and we need right back where we started. But we have benefited the ecosystem substantially, or in case of building marsh along a levee to protect it until that levee for that 20-year.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Senator.
Thank you.
You did a great job. Okay, next up, Home Navigation Canal Complex update, Mr. Reggie Dupree.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. More night to you, Mr. President. You know, I'd like to take a moment of personal privilege to thank y'all for y'all service. I served on this board for 25 years, and I guess I'm old enough to be involved in both the creation of this and CPRA. I want to explain to y'all the difference between this advisory commission and CPRA. The majority of the CPRA board members work directly for the governor of the state of Louisiana or indirectly. The majority of the commissioners here do not work for the governor. That's not a coincidence. So this board was created as a brainchild of then Governor-elect Mike Foster in late 1995. After State Senator Mike Foster was elected, he asked every incoming legislator to send a letter to him and what was the top priority facing the state. I was a new rookie state representative from Pointe-Shannon. I wrote coastal restoration and hurricane protection were the top issues facing the future of the entire state. The governor called me back about 2 weeks later. He said, Reggie, he says, out of 144 responses, you're the only one who wrote coastal restoration and hurricane protection. Therefore, you're going to be my floor leader on coastal issues. And he says, I want you to work with this lawyer and banker from New Orleans by the name of King Miller to start to implement these programs. That he created by executive order the group before this one, and then this group was put in the state statute sometime later, about 96 and 97. And Fast forward 10 years, Hurricane Katrina and Rita in 2005, Governor Blanco called 3 other people into the office, Scott O'Gell, the DNR Secretary, Johnny Bradbury, the DOT Secretary, and myself in the State Senate. She says, I'm giving y'all a task. Y'all are gonna put together a plan on how to integrate and consolidate coastal restoration and hurricane protection, and you're gonna try to figure out a way to get a recurring funding source to build these projects. We said, yes, ma'am. 2 weeks later, I briefed the governor with the first draft of the CPRA bill, and her first comment was, she looks at me and says, Reggie, I'm not gonna sign in a law, and you're not gonna be the lead author of the Coastal Restoration and Protection Board. Nobody's gonna respect us by creating a crap board. Therefore, we have to put protection before restoration in the name. And that is the true story. The first draft was spelled the other way. And then we also did the constitutional amendment that created, eventually became Go Mason. Congratulations, Joe, for passing the 2.0. I think this is a great, great move. Hopefully you get the same support we did back in 2006 to make this happen. But, you know, about a year or so ago, I decided, I'm thinking about retirement. Now it's getting very, very close next month. I figured it's time to let the next generation take over, so that's why I requested Angela Hidalgo, my assistant, take my place on this board. And your chairman here said how persistent he is. He convinced the Senate to resign 15 years ago to come back home. So it's been a very, very good run. So what I'm presenting here is on the Houma Navigational Canal Lock Complex, which is now under construction. This is a map of Morganza to the Gulf, like we talked about earlier, 98 miles from Gibson, Louisiana to Lockport. 70 of the 98 miles is in Terrell Parish, 28 in Lafourche. And you can see highlighted down here in the box is where the HNC crosses the Morganza to the Gulf, crosses the Houma Navigational Canal, which is a 35-mile channel dug in 1962 between Houma, Louisiana, and Intercoastal to the Gulf of Mexico. Brought in a lot of salt water, brought in a lot of problems, but it's the basis of our economy in Terrebonne and Lafourche Parish. That's why we have such a great economy, because of the channel. So we don't want to close this channel, we want to control this channel and use it for environmental purposes. So, every version of Morganza to the Gulf had a lock in it. From the way back in the early days, in the early 90s, when they first started studying it, the planned lock at this location. This is the artist rendition of what the final HNC lock complex will look like. The barge floodgate here in this flood wall has been in place for 11 years. It was put in place by Terrebonne Levee District with help from CPRA. So this is the HNC Bovadell floodgate, which is going to be part of the lock complex. So really, we're saying that built in 3 phases. It's actually 4. Phase 1 was done early on, 11 years ago. We could not afford a lock back then when we started to protect ourselves. So we knew that we had to close this channel for tropical events. But that's when the concept of a barge floodgate came in. Real early on. I remember when Sheriff Larkin back then came up with a concept of sinking a ship in the middle of the channel. And then later on, it developed into a floatable barge floodgate at this location. And that floodgate we spent $52 million, 273 foot long, 250 foot opening. When it's sunk in place, it holds 1.8 million gallons of water. So what are the purposes of having a lock? Obviously, back in around 96 or so, then Senator J. Emmett Johnson requested the Corps of Engineers start looking at designing a lock because we were having salt water getting into our drinking supply at home. declared it an emergency way back in '96. So the saltwater intrusion was a big problem. And the only fresh water we get in this part of the southern Terrebonne Basin comes from the Chapelai River, through the Intercoastal Canal, down the Home and Navigational Canal. Most of that fresh water is dumped off in the Gulf of Mexico, south of Corpus Creek, and it's not distributed throughout the southern part of the basin. So distribution and management of fresh water is a big one. Of course, storm risk reduction. This is the anchor, the most important component of working into the Gulf is this lock. It is much more efficient to operate a lock than a barge floodgate. Barge floodgates work well once they close, but they are a pain in the ass to operate. It takes 5 to 6 hours to close them. You have to dry dock them periodically. When you get damages from storms, sometimes you got to do dry docking and last we did right after item. The navigation industry is going to benefit from this because now with a barge floodgate, we have to close this channel 24 hours, at least 24 hours before pending hurricane. With a lock, the navigation industry can seek safe harbor until the last minute, until it's absolutely too unsafe to operate and winds are blowing above 40 miles an hour. Up until then, you can continue locking vessels in and seek safe harbor. This lock and 2 future floodgates on the Intercoastal Canal and the roads in West Homer will create one of the biggest safe harbors in the entire Gulf coast, all the way from Brownsville to down in southern Florida. And like I said earlier, there's always been a lock in here. The federal plan, the initial federal plan had a lock being built on the west side of the channel. We decided to build one on the east side of the channel. We had 21.5 acres of direct wetland impact. The federal plan had 157 acres of direct wetland impact. It was $750 million way back around 2008, and this is a lot cheaper and faster to build and a lot less impact to the environment. So one of the big issues with some models that they've done on salinity, you can look from this chart, you can see that about 60,000 acres benefit from a much less saltier environment, a fresher environment throughout the southern part of the Terrebonne Basin. All the green areas, blue and green, are what's being freshened up because of this lock. And you can see some of them are actually south of the levee system, like right here in the Regie area, south of Oak Canal Road. You have fresh water being forced through the environmental structures south of the hurricane protection line. So does just changing the salinity in South Louisiana make a difference? And I'm gonna borrow a quote from my good friend Wendell Bureau. There ain't nothing like reality, to model reality like reality itself. 2007, the top picture was taken in the wildlife management area just east of west of Pointe-Chandon, Terrebonne Parish, north of the hurricane protection line. We built the hurricane protection levees and repaired the environmental structures in the wildlife management area to work like it should. This is the same picture 9 years later, with no dredging, no sediment, only changing the salinity regime and making it fresher. And today, you couldn't take this picture because it's like a jungle, trees all grown up in it. So this is what can happen just sometimes change the salinity in some of our areas in South Louisiana. The project timeline for this lock is long. I want you to look up there. See that newspaper article? That is from 1990. Well, it's going to come up 1999, I believe it was, when the Corps started designing the lock. So all of our issues started around 1985. Hurricane Juan, minimal hurricane, flooded the bayou communities in South Central Louisiana. It wouldn't go away for 3 days. Made us realize how vulnerable we are, that we needed comprehensive storm surge protection. And then, of course, 92, we were able to start, we got authorization from Congress to start a reconnaissance study, and then Hurricane Andrew. I'm going to just quickly go through this, not go through all, but this is the long timeline We went into, the feasibility phase for reconnaissance in '95. Congress, in '98 authorized the beginning of the, designing of the lot project in '98, after J. Bennett Johnson requested it 2 years earlier. We got contingent opposition from Congress in 2000, but they didn't sign the report of time. 2002, the feasibility report was complete. Of course, we had other events like Isidore, Hurricane Lily flooded us. And then Katrina and Rita is the big one in '05. Then we were authorized in 2007 after Katrina for $886 million. 6 or 8 weeks later, in early 2008, the Corps tells us, and y'all take a joke, we need to put you back in another major federal study because of the new post-Katrina design standards. You know. So 2008, we had Gustav and Ike. We started, and phase 1 design for the HNC office was done up to 50% back in 2008. And 2008 was the straw that broke the camel's back for us, led by your chairman here. We had $135 million of both state and local money in the bank waiting to match the federal government. We decided, no, we're not doing that. We started to apply for permits and build component parts of this whole system on our own in that year. And right after that, then I went work for the levy district in '09. So the completion of the Bubba Dove, it says 14, but I think it was actually late 13. Then we got full authorization in 14. We executed a contract with the Restore Act dollars to design the home navigation down lot in 2015, acting as an agent of the state of CPRA. And the design is complete in 2021. We went to bid on phase 1, which was dredging, creation of about 143 acres of beneficial use wetlands, operations area for $11.5 million. This is pictures of phase 1. This is the preload area for the operations area. This is marsh creation area 1. This is in school board, section 16 land, all open water that's been converted to marsh creation with beneficial use dredge material. Same thing, area 2, area 3, and area 4. So these 4 areas add up to about 140 something, a little over 140 acres. Phase 2 will create an additional 80 acres. We'll have well over 200 acres on a project that only needed 40 acres of mitigation. So this is the order of condition. We just bid out phase 2. Phase 2, the engineering estimate was like $380 million. We took bids, 2 bids came in, one for $650 million, way out of budget. The other one, $394 million. We had our engineers do some value engineering, deferring some of the issues to phase 3. And phase 3, by the way, is the retrofit of the existing Bubba Dove floodgates at 23.5 feet, and which will be done sometime in the future. But with the value engineering, we just awarded a contract recently for $319 million. It's a 1,400-day contract, and it will be complete in mid-2028, funded totally by Restore Act dollars. This lock is 110 feet wide, with a second gate on the front side and another second gate on this side. It's being built to 23.5 feet, which is the 100-year or 1% level of protection for this area. This is the fly-through. Some changes have been made, but still you can see the basic concept of what we're building here on the home navigation canal. One change we made is put a cast in place the protected side floodgate and the flood walls between the old floodgate and the new lock. So we're going to defer. And those storage areas, I think we also forgot to do. But we still have an operational lot, category 5 operation building on it. So if he volunteers to go there, we probably need to be in a sausage center. Hurt me. And we still will have the 250-foot gate to be used for large tools going through it. But I think the operation plan is a big floodgate, probably closed more often than open and use the law. This is the last slide I have. This is just where we are and what we've done in the last 15, 16 years down in Terrebonne. So we have $1.2 billion spent on a federal project before we received any federal money. And we almost dollar for dollar, $300 million each of the taxpayers of Terrebonne Parish has funded towards Morganza. CPRA has direct about $300 million. And then the parish government, when Chairman Doug and the parish president did a lot of improvements to flood control, and that adds up a very conservative figure of $200 million. So that's 1.2 billion. We now have $468 million of federal money. Finally, the feds have shown, Congress has shown up with some construction dollars. And they have very recently expressed capability of $93 million for next fiscal year, 2025, bringing this total investment to $1.761 billion. So we continue moving forward to finish this, because it'll take many, many years to finish this project. And that's it. I'll be happy to answer any questions. I did leave you a few minutes before.
Just real briefly, how, once the lot complex is constructed, who will be responsible for operating and maintaining the lot?
The Corps, in the 2014 Word Bill, and the 2007 Word Bill, it says that the United States Army Corps of Engineers is responsible for O&M of the 2 intercoastal floodgates and the lock. Normally, the federal partner, the Corps, builds component parts of a system and turns it over to the non-federal partners for O&M. This is in reverse. The non-federal partners are building the largest components of Morganza Citadel, and we are going to hand it over to the Corps. Will there be problems? I guarantee there will be. So somebody's going to come up with a reason why not to do it, but it's supposed to be the Corps.
And there would be Corps personnel?
Yes, it is, because this is a federal waterway. Those 2 intercoastal floodgates in this lock is the 2 federal waterways in Terrebonne and Food Parish.
More questions? I'll be fine. Reggie, I'm proud to say that I went and hired you with 2 years left on your term as senator. I know you're going to enjoy your retirement, and I'm so glad that you, I, and Gordy, I'm proud to have worked with y'all, and the things that we've accomplished are tremendous with our supporting staff. Angela with big shoes to fill, and looking forward to the future. And you can still step in and tell us what to do every now and then, right?
Thank you all very much. We've kind of known back in the past as the 3 amigos of Terrebonne.
Oh, we're going to say that, yeah.
Thank you.
Chet, you're on. Courtney Bouchon, partner update.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me here. I guess I'm into the mic. Try to be that. If anybody knows Henri Boulet, I'm trying not to speak at you like he does. My good friend Henri, he likes to scream at me sometimes. I'm trying not to do that.
You know, I have to say, following Reggie Hooper, is a legend down the way. It's an honor to do that. And Reggie, thank you for your leadership throughout the years and kind of paving the way for a lot of us to continue to do some really good work with Coast. Thank you. I have to tell you, well, first, I'm Chet Chasson, for the members of the audience, you guys know my name. Chet Chasson, Executive Director for the Redwood Sport Commission, as mentioned earlier. All this discussion about beneficial use of dredging materials is music to my ears as a port director. Okay, it is critically important for us to continue to utilize our navigation channels as sources of sediment, where we can use $1 for mutual benefits of both environmental benefits and economic benefits. So continuing that momentum is greatly appreciated, and whatever we can do to help, we're happy to do. All right, so there's Port Fourchon. You can see that area just along the Gulf of Mexico, immediately just north of the banks of the Gulf of Mexico. It's at the mouth of Bayou Lafourche and Belle Pass, and every day other than a hurricane day, it's the best place to be, both recreationally. I know you're looking at me with the Mississippi River. Look, we love Bayou Lafourche, we love the Mississippi River as well. When it comes to the daily servicing of offshore energy, as well as the jumping off point for a lot of recreational and commercial fishing, it is a good place to be, other than a hurricane day. But I digress. All right, we're also the location. Red Fourche Port Commission has the South Fourche Leonard Junior Airport up in Galliano. So it's really just another way that we're servicing the offshore energy industry, as well as recreational aircraft and commercial aircraft coming in to bring people offshore to offshore locations. All right, so this Joni Tuck, as you can see here, on another fellow commission member, used to work for the Port Commission. And she created this slide for us, and it really encompasses what our philosophy at the Port Commission is. Everything we're doing is about being holistically resilient, doing everything we possibly can, beneficial use of dredging material, industrial development, while at the same time making sure that everything we do is achieving a balance between our community's resilience, our environmental resilience, and our economic resilience for the future. So, again, we're right on the edge of everything going on when it comes to coastal. I put this slide up, y'all seen all of the things about the Coastal Master Plan and all of that. Everything we do at the Port Commission when it comes to our projects, they're either in the master plan or consistent with the master plan when it comes to all our coastal work that we do in our partnerships with CPRA and other agencies that do coastal work. So over the years, through the 80s, Port Fourchon developed, continued to develop in the port for oil and gas services and in other offshore energy services. And then once Congress passed the Deepwater Horizon Act in 1995, which incentivized deepwater exploration and production in the Gulf of Mexico, it really caused Port Fourchon to expand rapidly. So prior to 95, we had a normal type of rate of expansion. From the year 2000 up to 2015, Port Fourchon was one of the, if not the fastest growing port in the country. And that was due to expansion for offshore energy services. But to the north of our port, north of our northern expansion, all of that 3,000 acres the port purchased back in the year 2000, and since then have been doing mitigation work as part of our development, as well as above mitigation, which I'll talk about in a second. But that's what that area north of the port looked like, north of Flotation Canal in 1999. That's what that area looks like today. Over 1,200 acres of marsh has been created. since the year 2000. As part of mitigation, again, above and beyond mitigation with material that we've had available. So this area here in the basically northwest of the port, this area has actually been there for over 20 years. It's been maintained and will continue to be for many years to come. And we're continuing to grow our acreage up in the area of the port. Above mitigation, once we started to know we had permitted our northern expansion slips A and B, and those slips were going to be 500 feet wide. Before we can actually dredge, the vessel operators came to us and said, hey, look, that's going to be too small. You need a 700 foot wide slip. But we had already permitted the impacts for dredging the 500 foot slips over the same footprint. So we had more material than we needed for mitigation. So we decided to build the Maritime Forest Ridge. So now that is a 6,000 linear foot ridge that's in the middle of marsh and open water, and is elevated to a +8 in the center, tapers down to marsh elevation on the edges. And now we work very closely with a number of different agencies you can see listed there, mainly the Barry Terrible National Estuary Program, and they planted the entire Maritime Forest Ridge. And now we have about 15 years of data on the types of plants and trees and things that grow in the salinity of that type of material along the Louisiana coast, as well as the type of birds that utilize it for nesting and feeding, such as piping plovers and red knots and the like. Now, as part of further mitigation work, as in development of slip B, you can see we dredge those slips and use all that material to build developable property, as well as our mitigation areas. We originally set out to permit slip B in the same areas in our northern expansion, north of the port, in our mitigation area. But we kind of had to change our heart, because what we typically talk about when we talk about mitigation is, you hear the term mitigation, but you never can see where that is, usually in remote areas. And again, you talk about mitigation, you don't see it. So what we wanted to do, we wanted to have road accessible mitigation. So we were able to take about 100-acre area. We were mandated as part of SLIP B to create 65 acres of marsh. We had enough material to create about 100 acres of marsh, which allowed us to put together this master plan and start to create what we call our coastal wetlands park. Okay, so that is a basically hands-on, touch and feel mitigation area that people can go in and recreate and really understand what mitigation looks like. So we have a tidal creek running through it. That's what it looks like now. This was actually after one growing season. I know Rudy talked about how this material is basically creates itself. Right? You put the material out there and grass grows before you even have to go and plant. So we have this tidal creek running through it. We have a kayak launch out there, a wharf. Very shortly, we're going to be building through the Land and Water Conservation Fund. We'll be building an elevated lookout tower that you'll have viewfinders on it to look out there, as well as placards that identify the type of plants that are out there, the type of fish you may see in the tidal creek, the type of birds that you may see out there. The other thing that I don't have a slide for it, I just want to briefly mention it, is we're actually building right here in this location on the coastal wetlands park, Louisiana's first wind turbine. When that'll be placed, it'll be a test turbine working with a company called Gulf Wind Technologies, small scale, study-driven piece of equipment that the Port Commission is actually going to off-take the power for. Be on the lookout for more information to come out about that project soon. So further along in terms of, we want to talk about beneficial use of dredge material, as part of some plans we have to further develop the port and be more efficient and effective for our customers, we knew that CPRA was working with NOAA on a Quipper project. And it was funded fully for construction, and the original source was supposed to be offshore. And we said to CPRA, we called CPRA, say, time out, let's talk about using port channels as the borrow source for this marsh creation area. And that's gonna, planning to create somewhere to the tune of 600 to 800 acres of marsh with beneficial use of dredge material from dredging Bell Pass and Bahia Fuch into some of our slips in the Northern expansion. So we're excited about that project. Hopefully it'll be underway later this year in terms of construction, late 24, early 25, so we can move that project forward. I know everybody's anxious to see that happen. Further along, as we have more material to look at and more projects we want to do in terms of coastal restoration projects to enhance that West Bell Pass project that CPRA is doing, we're also working in conjunction with EPA and CPRA on a QIPR project to build this area of marsh just to the west of the port to enhance the West Bell Pass project, build more marsh there as well. So we're excited about this project. It is it has been funded for engineering design. We're under engineering design now and continuing that program. So hopefully the next time we go to the QIPR task force and we can get some construction dollars in the near future. Further along, a project that is in conjunction with a number of different groups. Obviously, Ducks Unlimited is a big proponent of terracing, and they organize a lot of these projects. And CPRA is part of this project. Chevron, I believe, is as well as ConocoPhillips, the Wisner Land Trust, Loop has funded some of this area along with the Port Commission and the Fuchs Parish government to do some terracing in the area, and we continue to look for more ways to partner with a number of different groups to do projects like this into the future. Moving forward, we've been doing, barrier island renourishment and building since the 1980s. Reggie mentioned Hurricane Juan earlier. Hurricane Juan in 1985 really took a toll on this section of Fourchon Beach. It's about a mile section of Fourchon Beach that the Port Commission has been working in renourishing and enhancing and engineering for that time. And we have a project coming back. Obviously every storm that comes in impacts this area. So it takes a long time to plan projects because there's continual impacts to this area. When we finally have a project in place that we will be, we actually have bid out to do some breakwater enhancements. We have already 12 breakwaters out here. It's been out there since the mid-90s. So we're going to go in and renourish those breakwaters, as well as another project to renourish this beachhead that is right in the center of the Caminada Headlands project that took place that we worked with CPRA on for many years. But you can see some of the sources of funding, a lot of money from FEMA, but the Port Commission, the Food Strategy Government, and CPRA helping us to put this project together. And we will continue to look at the ability to do more work along this beachhead and partner with CPRA into the future. Now, I wanted to just talk about further and what our thoughts are in terms of further development and what we can do in terms of taking the development of the port and continue to enhance our coastal restoration capabilities. As part of our future development, Fourchon Island would be our deepwater port facility. As part of the permitting process here, we're in the permitting process now. We anticipate that by the end of the year, we may have our permit. We've been in this process for about two and a half years. But we anticipate somewhere between 300 and 600 acres of mitigation that will be necessary for this project. And that's what we anticipate seeing as part of that development. Is deepwater rig repair refurbishment project, cargo, offshore wind, decommissioning, fabrication, the like, to make the state of Louisiana and the United States have more capability to service offshore markets and compete on the global market. the global scale. But as part of that, in this deepening plan that we have and this facility, we work with the Water Institute of the Gulf to create what we call the Partnership for Our Working Coast. And you can see the original group of partners here with Fushan Water Institute, Shell, Chevron, Downs, and National Fish and Wildlife Foundation in really putting the science behind all of the work and development that we wanted to do into the future with all that dredge material that we'll have as we look towards deepening. So as part of that, we've worked with the Partnership for Our Working Coast with the Water Institute, and really to again, put the science behind creating the mutual benefits to the community, to our infrastructure, to our habitat, and the potential of carbon capture and sequestration with all the areas that we're going to enhance. And we had a phase one, and that was doing that, but I just talked about, really identifying those areas that we should use that material for. And basically the areas that we're talking about, that we've identified, are what the QuickWork project, the first QuickWork project would handle, as well as the second, as well as our mitigation for the Fushan Island development. And then the next phase that we're going in, phase one was identifying the locations. Phase two was kind of working with the community and the users of the port in making sure that they were okay with everything that we had identified as areas, and they were. So we had that social interaction there. And then our next phase and the vision that we have is, creating this living lab in the port area with all these different partners. You can see all these groups that are working together. So we're really excited about the future of both port development as well as the coastal restoration activities that we can do and protection activities that we can do as part of all of development, really showing how industry and environment, as I said earlier, introducing myself, how industry and environment can do work very well together. That's all I have. Thank you.
Any questions for Chip? Good. All right, thank you, Chip. All right, next thing, we don't have any speaker reports, but I'm gonna open it up to the public. If you'd like to speak, come up and say a few words if you like. Going once, going twice, 3 times. All right, we're moving on.
I just would like to request at some point in a future meeting, if you guys would consider inviting maybe Chris Shibley to come and give a presentation on an electrofisher that they're developing at Wildlife and Fisheries, as well as maybe consider Ms. Sharp with CPRE from Lafayette. She has a really interesting presentation I saw for Southwest Louisiana. I think the group and the public would really enjoy seeing that. She's got some disturbing stuff about Southwest Louisiana, but we need to see it and figure out how to do it. If you would consider that at some future meetings, I'd appreciate it.
Just put it on the agenda.
Fantastic, thank you.
Motion to adjourn? Okay, let's go to second, Chad. Any objection? I'm not sure yet. We'll just make sure that we communicate with you guys, send out material, and when our next meeting is. Look, I'm accessible all the time. I have a cell phone, you guys can call me and scream at me or say something nice, or whatever y'all want to say. Steer me. So thank you for your patience, and see you guys next time.
Good.